Hey, you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Listen, I just wanted, for my second take, I'm trying to make a video here. The first one was nice, but there was a lot of sunlight that was blocking the shot. So I wanted to make a response to my man Supreme. He had made this video about people expressing nationalism by buying American cars, and how that nationalism, what would happen is it could be construed with racism, because what you're saying is you really don't want to buy the cars made by the yellow or the brown people. I have a different point of view, and I think it's the exact opposite. I mean, let's operate off the general premise, and the general premise is that you want to support your domestic manufacturer because you want to keep the money here, you want to keep your community strong and keep your communities vital, right? Now, I agree with that. And I think that when a lot of the black people moved north, because most of up until this point in time, and most of the plants were in the north, or they were in the Midwest, they were concentrated in large cities. Like here in New York, even though there were no factories inside the city, up until recently, like when I was in high school, there used to be a General Motors plant in Terrytown where they made that Astro van, but that was the last model assembled there before they decided to close the plant. So that was about the early to mid 90s. And recently, over the past 10 years, or maybe 15 years, I don't think it was that far, but maybe about 10 years or so, in the early or mid 2000s, Ford had a plant in Edison, New Jersey. General Motors also had another plant in Linden, New Jersey, where they made the Cadillac Fleetwood and those S10 Blazers. They made those in that facility, and all of those facilities have been demolished as they decided it would be more cost effective to move those plants back, move them down south to Mexico, to Brazil, or assemble the cars in other places. Now, I don't agree with that, but my point was that where I differ with his argument is that by the notion that, remember, we used to hear this thing, and we still do, that American cars are inferior in quality compared to imported cars, but there was this one caveat. Those imported cars only meant Japanese cars. Didn't mean Korean cars. They didn't mean European cars. Those imported cars pretty much only constituted about 3 manufacturers and basically 2 core manufacturers, and you could give someone you can give them a pass on the third, but that's not really the case. So they applied to Honda and Toyota and maybe Nissan. They didn't apply to any European manufacturer. You only assume that the European car was of higher quality because you were paying a premium for it, because after the cost of importing the car into the country, most of them have to be sold as luxury cars. And this is true to this day. This is why when you get a Volkswagen, in order for your Volkswagen to cost the same as the Ford does, you'll find that car was either assembled in Mexico or Brazil. This is the fact. Because the ones they would have to import from Germany, those cars would be so expensive that they would have to retitle those, and this is what they do. They would call those Audis or Porsches. They give reference, keeping my Volkswagen analogy relative. Now, my thing is, once those assembly plants, once they had become integrated, so to speak, when they had a lot of black employees, and these black employees were receiving union wages, then it made sense. It made sense for you to what is the word you could use? It made sense for you to castigate their quality of work, right? You would say that the cars must be low quality because you've got an integrated workforce assembling the car, as opposed to Japanese cars who have a homogenized workforce, or European car companies which have a homogenized workforce. Well, it's the integrated. See, it's a stab at miscegenation and integration, but they're not going to tell you straight out right that they don't want to see black people making $100-something thousand a year just from building cars, because they're telling you that that's not skilled labor. You're just assembling cars. You're just holding there with a pistol, with an impact wrench and a widget, but that's not. Think about this. I mean, seriously. My cousin, her ex-husband works at a Chrysler plant where they build that big Ram truck, and they make that the Jeep, one of those Jeep models. I think it's the Grand Cherokee, but it might be the Liberty or something like that. But I think the Liberty may be made in Mexico. So I think it's the Grand Cherokee, and they beat the Dodge Ram 1500, that model. This job here is 60 hours mandatory a week. So you get your union wage at 40, and then you get time and a half for the next 20. Now, how you decide to do that, you can do 5 12-hour days. You can come in 6 10-hour days, so on and so forth. You can do 5 drive 8-hour days and then do half a day or half a day on the weekend or I don't, whatever. There's a combination of ways you can do it. Now, if your model is popular, they always have that optional third shift where the plant is running 24 hours a day. You know, like take for instance that Chevy Camaro, that car is popular, so that assembly plant will run all day in 3 shifts. So, you know, guys like this, they're making good money. When you go out there to Detroit, you got guys living in mansions, and my uncle told me everybody out here has a boat. Now, I don't mean Detroit City, I mean Detroit metro area, because, you know, when you go to the city limits, things get run down, but even that isn't, that's a degree of racism that people are not willing to acknowledge. They want to think that they gave that city to, who's the young guy? Not Andrew Young, he was from Atlanta. Coleman Young, is that it? Coleman Young was the mayor of Detroit, and it was, once you gave the black people these cities, then the cities fell on hard times. They're never willing to talk about how they divested all their economic interests in those cities and concentrated them further out in the suburbs. But back to my point, I just wanted to keep this analogy based on his automobile reference. What he was saying was that, it is not true that the black people, because where these plants are located, the black people, they've already sucked all the income and the investments out of these communities. That's true, somewhat, but like I said before, in Chicago, there are there's 2 Ford plants. In Atlanta, there's a Ford plant. You know, in Chicago and Atlanta, that's the place where they make that Ford Taurus. You know, in St. Louis, there are 3. All right, there's 2 General Motors plant and a Ford plant, and there's another couple of General Motors plants in Kansas City on both sides of the state line. You know, so my thing is, these plants are concentrated around cities where there are large populations of black people. But the problem that the economic system has is letting these people be vested in any shape, form, or fashion, especially with a job like that, a union job, because this is basically what it was. It was union busting. Oh, now that the union has a high black participation rate, we can't allow them to get a living wage. And this is what all this talk about sequestering and austerity is coming from. All right? Look how they want to destroy the post office, because the post office was one of the easiest jobs for a person to get, especially if you had military service. You go in there, take a test. If you know how to read, you become a mail carrier. That's a good job. It allows you to buy a home and invest yourself in your community. The problem that they're having is it's very hard for you to spread eugenic policies if people are vested in their community, because they are a counterbalance to the fact that you want the facts in quotations, the facts that you want to share, because you'll find out that the things that you're saying are not facts, because if they were facts, they would apply in every instance. Your facts only seem to be applicable if people are in economic dire straits. So, when they told you that the cars were low quality, it was a manner of getting you to believe that the people who build those cars do not deserve what they're being paid. And if they don't deserve what they're being paid, why are you paying them this money? Right? Because this is how Americans think. They don't think that, people that work for General Motors, they had health insurance for their entire family. Even when they retired, they were still covered. All right? The kind of money that GM and Ford put into the University of Michigan system, into the University of Ohio, state university system, and the private universities, these type of things, your kids could go to school. Contemporary Americans don't think like that. They don't think, they've got something, we should all have that thing, because it's such a crucial thing, it's such a prudent and beneficial thing to have. What they think now is, if I got it, and you don't have it, then I don't deserve it. That's just insane. Think about everything they do. All right? People need public assistance. How dare you get something I'm not getting? You get lazy. You don't want to work. I'm like, well, maybe the guy is working, but still, he can't get the ends to meet. But all of that stuff, I just think people have really they really bought into some type of foolishness where they can make arguments and draw conclusions that don't make any sense. And some people will say it would be from white privilege, but I don't believe there's such a thing as white privilege. I believe that there is a thing of white pretense. What you have done is constructed a system where you need everyone else to believe the illusions and the assertions that you are making. Right? Privilege, you wouldn't need to have the system, because if you really had privilege, you would be proven to be the best qualified and the most adept. But you don't see that. What you see is people who need to convolute, coerce, and convert the system so they can retain their position of authority. It's a pretense. It's not privilege. Right?